Hello, thespians. It's a good week for videos. I think that we've done quite well this week. It's good to see Mark again. It's a continuation. It's actually a real thing. So that's happening there. So what's news? I've been watching the videos, and I'm gonna get started by answering the two questions that were posed this week. One about where we sit inside of our bodies and where we come from and center of being and all that kind of stuff. Which I'm going to answer by talking about physicality training and all that, which is I think what Sam was going for in that and what we do. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about what physicality training and all that means to me. And then I'm going to talk about Mark's very interesting question, which I've been actually discussing recently with my cast, which is where we sit in our minds, or where our personalities come from, where we come from on a more philosophical level. But to start with physicality. I personally, me as Kevin, need quite a lot from my shoulders. I'm quite forward as a stage manager, and my experience with that has left me quite tense. So everything is a little bit riled up, a little bit over exaggerated. I go up a lot. I'm not as relaxed as I should be. So I'm up here a lot, and I lead a lot from there. I lead a lot from that kind of tension from my shoulders and lower back kind of area, and that's where a lot of my center of gravity sits. I'm quite fond of playing with center of gravity to work on characters and go on things, and one of the best pieces of advice I was ever given as a very young man, when I was being told in a drama class how to act drunk, and it's what really twigged to me what center of gravity can do. And they just said, imagine your center of gravity is your nose, and then rapidly switch it to your knee, and then rapidly switch it to your elbow, and just kind of that concept of walking around rapidly switching your center of gravity between things. Really fun, for one. Also a really interesting thing to do. But places I'm quite fond of leading from, I am quite fond of leading characters from the same place I lead from shoulders and back. It shows a lot of drive and tension and movement forwards. Also quite fond of leading from the chest, that kind of I'm going forward. I find, for the Doctor Who fans out there, I think Matt Smith's Doctor leads a lot from the chest, and there's a wonderful a scene in the very first episode, the 11th hour, where he pushes between two doors and just it perfectly shows where Matt Smith is going. That's where my Doctor's going to lead from. That's that really powerful kind of primal, I'm coming from. All of my body is going towards you. Leading from the crotch is currently what my one of my actors is doing a lot, and it's great for the character that he's doing. But I find it really aggressive. It's a really aggressive stance. And then there's leading from different places. Quite bookish characters, if I'm looking for them, will tend to lead from their head. I'm quite fond of leading from there, from that central point. If I'm going for a bookish kind of overly smart character, they tend to go forward a lot of movement towards, especially if they're trying to explain something to someone. It's a lot of center of gravity is their head. Kind of if they go poked in the back, they just go flat on their face. Leading from specific shoulders, leading from a hand. Everything I'm pulled forwards all the time is another really interesting one to play with. So that's kind of I think a lot about where my center of gravity sits when I'm performing, and what I'm doing, and what my center of gravity is saying about the character that I'm working with. Which sounds like a whole lot of wanky bullshit, but I'm a really big fan of working with it, and it helps me with a lot of what I'm doing. I find that even my center of gravity shifts when I'm working from when I'm directing, or when I'm working from just when I'm hanging out with my friends. I automatically switch myself around center of gravities, and it's really interesting to come up with a really wacky center of gravity to play with when you're not sure what your character does, and you're not sure what they do. Just pick a random kind of body part and go, that's going to be my center of gravity for today's rehearsal. And 90% of the time you'll never use it again, but it paints some really interesting pictures about what you can do. So on the Mark's question, now that I've wasted 4 minutes 10 seconds on talking about that, I'm not sure. It sounds like you're quite familiar, Mark, with Descartes and Descartes' philosophical theories. But most of my kind of opinions of where myself comes from Descartes' theories. So the whole idea of there being all of this head stuff, so all of the stuff that's in my head, I got my brain, left and right center, they work in different ways, all that kind of stuff, all good, the scientific stuff, that's all believable. And then somewhere in a magical universe behind my head is me. And the reason why this theory got solidified home for me was because of impulse exercises and working with impulse, because I couldn't identify specific points in my head where impulses were coming from, or why I was having those particular impulses, which is something I'm very good at doing. So I couldn't find where they were coming from. So I concluded that Descartes' theory was the closest for me personally, of there being a kind of spiritual entity separate from us, an id, essentially, that exists outside of that. And that must be where a lot of our personalities and impulses come from. So I've gone slightly over time, because I got a little bit carried away talking about my physicality. But I'll see you all next week.